Welcome to the Bourbon Band. I'm Phil.
I'm Julie. It's ECBP B523 time.
Couple important things that we need to talk about today. It's not just the release of the latest batch of Elijah Craig Barrel Proof batch B523, as Julie said, but this is the first batch that I can recall where the 12-year age statement is not on this bottle. And that's a whole can of worms because people have been panicking about it, freaking out, ranting, but we have some important news to share that maybe you might not have heard, and that's that while this batch is 11 years, 5 months, batch C923 we just learned is actually going to be a minimum of 13 years aged. So we're going to talk a little bit more about why we think it's not exactly time to hit the panic button just yet on ECBP. But first and foremost, we need to do a tasting and a review.
So I don't normally gravitate to ECBP, but when I do drink it, I just think it's just wonderful bourbon. It just has all the flavors that you expect.
Yeah, and it is, the whiskey that sort of unlocked my love of bourbon, that showed me the huge flavors that I was missing previously. And A123 was fantastic. B523, this is 124.2 proof, and it's 11 years, 5 months. Now, that's the minimum age of the whiskey that's in this particular batch. So the rest of it could be 12 years, 13, 15 years. But the minimum age on this one is 11 years, 5 months. And like we said, we know that C923 in September is going to be over 13 years aged, but I really want to get to this whiskey first, and this one costs us $75. That's the going rate here in the state of Oregon. Didn't really need to lift it to my nose. I was already getting an aroma while it was sitting on the table.
Doesn't disappoint. Lovely oak.
This is a spectacular nose on this one. There's a vanilla dusted peanut in there. Not a huge surprise there. A little chocolate, some dry oak.
I can also smell that she's going to be a proofy gal at that 124 proof. Well, cheers to your favorite.
Cheers to my favorite.
Ooh, there's a nice cherry note in there. Ooh.
Yeah. Almost like a dried cherry.
I got a little marshmallow on the finish.
Clings to the palate. That's a sticky whiskey.
Sticky whiskey.
It is spicy. There's pepper here, and I'm terrible at identifying black pepper or white pepper, but there is pepper here, peanuts, raisins, milk chocolate, vanilla, all the things that you normally get.
It's a nice chocolate note, which you kind of come to expect with ECBP. I love the oaky flavor. It is kind of like a drier cherry versus like a sweet, burst in your mouth kind of cherry.
Right. I think all the flavors in this are pretty dry, pretty earthy. I don't know what that spice is. There's peppermint or spearmint or something there that builds with each sip of this. The mint is really powerful.
Yeah, I really like the proof point on this. It's giving me a really nice Kentucky hug, but it's not overpowering.
Yeah, it is. The thing that's building for me is that mint. It is that spice. That's not generally my favorite. I like a balanced whiskey that has some spice, has some sweetness. This starts off really sweet and then goes really heavy on the spice. If you like a very spicy whiskey, to me, at least, I don't know if you're thinking this is as spicy as I am, but there's a lot of pepper, a lot of mint, and those things sort of come through and take over the finish.
I was thinking that there's something in this sip that's almost competing with one another. So I'm getting all the flavors you're talking about. I am getting that mint flavor that's coming through. And it's just kind of unexpected, which maybe that's not a bad thing. Sure. But it almost throws it a little off balance.
Yeah, and now on my third sip there, I'm getting a little buttery brown sugar, almost like that's the good stuff that melts on top of your oatmeal. That's showing up a little bit here. The best part of this bourbon to me is the nose. I think the aroma is stellar. I think the palate is very good. The finish is not really hitting for me.
I was thinking the finish is a bit lacking.
Yeah, it's a ton of punchy, spicy, minty flavors. I would say it lingers, but it's just not my favorite finish on an ECBP product.
Right. And we actually just talked at length about the previous ECBP, and we really liked that one.
Yeah.
We're not comparing it right now, but even in my memory, which we all know is not the best, this one doesn't really hold a candle to that one.
Yeah, A123 took us a minute to get into it because it was pretty hot up front, but once that one settled down, and once you let it sit in your glass for 15 minutes, it is stellar. It has so much flavor. It's so delicious. And it finishes with a nice round flavor that's satisfying. I think this is satisfying too. If you like minty, spicy whiskey, there's a lot to like here.
I agree with that assessment. If you like that spicy, and mint can be spicy, right? Like it can have just a little bit of bite to it. And this really does. It tastes different than what I was expecting ECBP to taste like.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think if we talk a little bit about why they may have pulled this one at 11 years, 5 months instead of 12 years, there is a very dry oak there that is a hint of bitterness. And with all that mint, with all that spice, if you have a more bitter oak, maybe that doesn't balance so nice. So maybe I'm reading too much into it, but it does seem like maybe pulling it out when it's a little bit younger did this one a favor, and that's why they did it. I mean, until they produce a whiskey that I genuinely do not like, I have no reason to not trust Elijah Craig to do the right thing with their whiskeys.
Yeah, I mean, we've had bourbons that have been over oaked and it kind of ruined the experience. And I can see how the flavors that are presented in this sip could get overpowering. That mint is overpowering. The oak can be overpowering.
It's different. And I think that's what we're going to come to expect from Elijah Craig Barrel Proof in the future is not only are they all going to taste a little bit different, but we're going to see some creativity from the distillers, from the blenders, quite honestly.
Yeah, and that's what I find so interesting about this sip, because in the previous review, it was like, this is bourbon. It tastes like bourbon. It has all the flavors. It checks all those boxes. This almost feels like a spin on it. Like somebody got a little fun and funky with it. That's what we're drinking right now.
No, I think that's exactly right. And looking ahead, C923, which releases in September, we know that's going to be 13 years aged minimum. I really think that they're going to start having some fun with these batches and showing us some different sides of Elijah Craig Barrel Proof. I don't think that's a bad idea, especially because, we've had lots of good single barrels, private release single barrels, and just recently we tried 2 of them that were 8-year, one of them that was 10-year, and one of the 8 years was so good, it blew away the competition. It was absolutely delicious. So we know that they've got some good barrels that aren't super well aged, and yes, these are small batch, so the blending is where all the magic happens with this particular whiskey. But I do think we have to be a little patient here and see where they're going in the future. I'm not ready to push the panic button yet, and I don't think anybody should be, because this is still very good whiskey, even though it doesn't really hit my palate the way that a lot of my favorite ECBP whiskeys have. I would put this, though, for the last couple of years, probably somewhere near the middle of those releases. There were a couple that I wasn't a huge fan of. I think that the nose on this is fantastic. I think that the palate is very good. I think the finish is okay, and I think it's super satisfying overall. Where are you going?
From batch to batch, maybe we're just going to expect to find some new flavors here.
I'm all for it. You're still getting an 11-year, 5-month aged whiskey at 124 proof. That's a solid value, and this is still very good whiskey.
I agree with you. The nose and the palate are where it's at. The finish is fine. For me, this is definitely not my favorite. That mint really does overtake it the more that you drink it. And this isn't a rye, so I'm not expecting it to be super minty or super spicy. And so that kind of shifts your thinking on this one. I still think it's a solid value, and I like it.
Well, there you go. We think it's a solid value. We like it, and we want to know what you think. And please keep the comments section civil on this, because we know you have strong feelings, and we do too. Like I said, I'm an Elijah Craig fanboy from way back, and so until they give me a reason not to trust what they're doing, I'm going to accept that they're just sharing some more transparency with us, and that's only going to produce a more interesting value for all of us in the bourbon world. But let us know what you think, and from wherever we are
to wherever you are.
Cheers.
Cheers. There really is some nuts on there.
It does coat nice.
Yeah.